Welcome, listeners, to a realm where shadows dance and whispers echo. I'm your host, Rick Clifton, and this is Quills and Chills, the podcast that brings you face to face with the masterminds behind the macabre. In each episode, we journey into the minds of horror writers and filmmakers to uncover the secrets lurking within their tales of terror. From classic tales to modern nightmares, we'll traverse the corridors of the human psyche and unravel the threads of dread that keep us turning the pages or sitting out there in the dark. Welcome to Quills and Chills. Hello and welcome back to Quills and Chills. I'm your host, Rick Clifton, and today I am thrilled to be joined by award-winning author Sarah Pinsker, whose latest novel, Haunt Sweet Home, offers a very fresh twist on the haunted house genre. So welcome to the show, Sarah.
Thank you so much for having me.
I absolutely love this book. It was truly unexpected, and I wanted to dive into that. But before we do that, I'd love to get to know you a little bit. Can you tell us just a little bit about yourself and maybe that amazing wall of beautiful instruments behind you?
Yeah. So the wall of instruments behind me is because in my former life I was a singer-songwriter. I still do that a little bit, but it's hard to balance both. So I spent a few years on the road, both solo with my acoustic guitar and with my band, which is the same songs but louder and faster. And yeah, so this is my wall of guitars. You can't quite see. This is my main stage guitar. My wife made this one for me. Is the other brag I have here.
Oh, there we
And
go.
then up here, that's my great uncle's mandolin that he bought in the Merchant Marine in 1923. So,
Oh, I love it.
or it is from 1923. I don't know if that's when he bought it, but close enough.
I love it. I think it's fantastic. So, how did you venture from music to writing? What was that journey like?
You know, I wrote stories as a kid, and I took all of the all of the college workshops that were available to me. I wrote, and at the same time as I was also having fun playing music. But I had internalized at a very early age that writer wasn't a viable career choice. That like the authors of my favorite books were not necessarily making a living at it. Like somehow that got conveyed to me, and that I shouldn't consider that to be an option. No one said that about music. Like no one actually said to me like me. It seems like in hindsight that there should have been something said, or maybe it was implied and I missed it. But so yeah, I got my degree in history, and then I took off on the road, and and yeah, I came back. As far as I'm concerned, both both fiction writing and songwriting are elements of storytelling. And
I
so
100% agree with that.
yeah, exactly. So it's kind of the same muscle. It's different colors in the palette. So in the same way that also writing in different genres are different colors in the palette, and if there's a story you want to tell, you have different options, and you can kind of get a feel for whether an idea makes a better song, or whether it's a better story or a novel. Like there's a point where you can kind of figure out what the scope of the thing that you're telling is. But to me they were sort of all the same thing, and my stories had gotten shorter and shorter, and songwriting seemed like the really natural size for me. And then I had an idea that didn't fit in a song, and I started like expanding back outward again, and they ballooned, and now I have a hard time squeezing back into song again. I've done yeah, but they are part of the same thing. And if I were concentrating on songwriting again, I could write songs. Um, yeah,
I feel like that pendulum will swing back for you, no problem
yeah,
whatsoever.
yeah. And there are a few times that they've sort of collided. It might actually be two pendulums, like one of those things with the balls that knock back and forth.
Exactly.
Yeah, which is, I guess, what happens when I write. I have a lot of stories and one novel that are music oriented, and so I think that those are where the two kind of collide, and
I love
that's
it.
a lot of fun. Yeah.
So what's your process for writing? Are you kind of an obsessive plotter? Do you just kind of dive in and go, or a little bit of both, or
I
how do you
I
tackle that?
I hate plotting and do it under great protest. I've had to do it a couple of times for novels that were under contract that they wanted, proof that there was something more than an idea coming their way. And it turned out kind of interesting and useful. So I can't say that I hated it. It just wasn't part of my yeah, it's not part of my natural process, is I guess what I would say. I do love getting partway in a book and then doing a reverse outline, and then until I catch up with where I am, and that helps me figure out what the second half of the book is. So I do like that. Short fiction, I always just go for it. I kind of have an idea of where it ends, and I just go. And beyond that, my tip, and I know I've written essays about this, so people may have heard this from me before, but my big tip is that I walk the dogs in the morning, like I roll out of bed. I'm pretty sure I put clothes on, and I just head out the door. I'm good at grabbing my keys, and like I just go. And while I'm walking the dogs, I don't ever listen to anything. I take my phone with for emergencies, but I ignore it. And I kind of plot while I go. Like the nice thing about having dogs is you can talk to yourself, and people think you're talking to the dogs, or that you do have Bluetooth in or something. And so I just sort of tell myself the story that I want to be working on and what I plan on doing for that day. And the way that that works out is I get back to when I do get started for the day, it's never a blank page. I know, like I've kind of already mapped to some degree the thing that I want to do for that day. So I'm not facing like the computer at the same time as I'm saying, what do I need to do today?
It's interesting that you say that, Sarah. I've talked to a lot of authors, and I always am curious about that question. And everybody's the same way. Like I hate plotting, I hate outlining, I hate all of it. I just want to dive into it, and I just want to go. And so you're not alone in that regard. So, and having done a little myself, I can see the appreciation for the outline and how it helps, but I'm not that person either. So
Yeah.
totally get it. So. Well, let's talk about this book, shall we? Let's talk about Haunt Sweet Home. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what this book about? I love the plot. So,
Well, thank you. Yeah, so this book got started because in my second novel, We Are Satellites, there's a character in the hospital, and I wanted him to be watching some like inane show on like basic cable, and I came up with Haunted House Hunters, which is like it was sort of a riff on House Hunters, the show where people buy one of three houses that they look at, but in reality, actually, they've already bought one of the houses, and the whole show is like totally manipulated in any case because they're pretending to choose between the houses even though they already own one of them outright. So yeah, so I thought it would be fun if they were doing that, but it was also a paranormal show. And I stuck this character in the hospital, and I invented this show, and he's kind of drifting in and out while they say, and then there were bones in the walls, and what could they be? And then they go to commercial and they come back, and it's always like a squirrel or a snake or whatever. Something died in the walls, and like because it's a cheesy basic cable show, and uh, that show came out in the world, and I was like, I actually think this is a great idea for a TV show. I think I could run with this, but I don't know how to pitch a TV show. And a friend of mine said, but you know how to write a book. And so I said, okay, yeah, I could totally do this as a book. And I changed it from Haunted House Hunters to Haunt Sweet Home because I didn't want to get sued by house hunters, because they own like 17 different like copy copyrights or something like that, like for House Hunters International and blah blah blah. And I couldn't be sure that they didn't already own that one. But so the show in the book is a reality show in which people fix a show. So it's a home improvement show by day. They've bought an old mansion, and they want to fix some aspect of it. they fix it by day. They get really tired because they've been, laying tile or wallpaper or whatever, and then they have to sleep in it at night. And that's where, so it's been going on for a few seasons, and that's where our narrator comes in, is that she gets offered the job of a production assistant, who is the person at the bottom of the food chain on a TV show. And she gets offered a position by her cousin, who's the host, and she goes off to work on the show and finds out that she's part of the night crew, and the night crew has been hired to kind of zhuzh things up a bit because the ratings were going flat. So now they have a night crew that manufactures scares for the people living there. And then there's another layer that I won't spoil, but um, yeah.
Yep. Well, I love it, and I think I remember thinking when I first read it, it's like if I'm going to work on a show like that, I want to work on the night crew because I think that
Yeah,
is where the fun is. That's where the fun happens, right?
agreed. Yeah, otherwise you're stuck. Like, I mean, I guess it depends on if you like carpentry, but
That's
yeah,
right.
the day crew is going to get dirty,
Yep, exactly.
and the night crew's
Uh,
going to get dirty in a different way, I guess. But
yes, they're gonna make that. Well, I won't say that. That's probably.
yeah,
I'll stop right there. So let's talk about the main character a little bit, Mara. And Mara or Mara? Mara. Or
I'm fine with either.
open
Like,
to
I think
interpretation.
I think I say Mara just because I'm a Sarah, but I'm okay with either.
Well, let's talk a little bit about her. I feel like she's in the beginning of this a little bit adrift. She's sort of often on the outskirts of sort of floating on the outside of the family and everything. Talk about writing her as a character and as your protagonist. I'd love to know, without spoilers, talk about her arc a little bit and about developing her.
Okay, yeah, she is a character who is a little bit adrift. I like characters who are trying to figure themselves out. I think they often pair well with people with plots where people are figuring out the world. Like if you pair those things together. And I kind of liked the idea of someone who was feeling like an outsider in her own family, because she was going to be entering, the family of a TV show, which is a work environment, but it's also a very intense, close knit work environment. They're all living in the same motel. So I thought it would be interesting to have someone who felt like an outsider and sort of didn't know how to make herself an insider, and was trying to figure out her life. I aged her up and down a few times, um, trying to figure out where I wanted her to be in terms of the frustration of not knowing what she wants to do with her life. And I ended up putting her a little bit older um, than initially than my initial plan, just because I wanted her to be like a little bit old for being a PA, a little bit old for getting started, having gone through, tried college several times. I was very sympathetic to the trouble she was getting from her family, and just the fact that she wants to find herself really badly, and she's just looking for that thing that will be her thing, and everyone in her family has a thing.
Yep, I could relate to that in so many different ways, and I thought she was, uh, I could empathize with her in so many situations, and I would get frustrated with the family. I'm like, oh my god, just leave her alone. So
Yeah,
I feel
yeah.
like I get that. What about Jeremy? So Jeremy is Mara's cousin, and he's also, well, I'll let you do it, but I'll let you sort of explain who he is. But I'm kind of curious if you could talk a little bit about his role and what he does, how he sort of helps push Mara into sort of facing her own uncertainties or her own fears in a way.
Okay, yeah. Her cousin is the host of the show, and in a family of golden children, he's the most golden child. And even then, he kind of gets poked at by the family too. Like I think their thing is poking at each other, and it's a question of whether anyone can withstand that, I think. But he sees that she's adrift, and he teases her too, but he also offers her this job, and I think wants to help, and then he stands back a little bit, which I think I'm going to leave it to the reader as to, his motives, but I think there's a couple of options on that. Um, but I think he's a fun contrast with her just because he's someone who figured himself out early, or at least a version of himself, and then also he's on TV, so there's both the
The
version of
persona,
him.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, like there's the guy he actually is, and then there's, the exaggerated version of himself that he plays on TV, since it's a reality show and he's kind of, he's using his name. It's him in quotes, but it's also the the hyper cheerful, hyper useful, most smarmy, most charismatic version of himself that goes on TV. So, I think in that situation that even your family might start to accept that version of you.
Yeah, for sure. So one of the things that I really liked about the story is I felt like it leaned into, I think, what would be, and I think it has been described actually, a subtle kind of haunting that's going on. And there's I'd love to know how you sort of, I loved actually how you sort of weaved in these introspective moments, especially with Mara and, in her alone time and stuff. And I'm kind of curious if you could talk a little bit about balancing those with balancing those kinds of moments along with the story itself.
I think I wanted. I mean, she is an introspective person. She gets in her own head, and I like writing those characters. Yeah. There's a lot of what you might even call interstitial stuff in this book. Like even when I'm trying to choose readings for public readings from this book, it's hard to figure out where to start and stop because things kind of flow into each other. And she has this summer on the show that's in kind of a flow state. She's constantly tired. She's on the night crew, but things happen that keep her up sometimes in the day, which are kind of the opposite of what's happening with the people who live in the house and are being forced to stay up at night. And she looks for ways to keep things interesting for herself, and she looks for ways to really motivate herself both to do the job and to keep looking for her thing. Yeah, so I guess I love writing introspective moments. I know that that might be weird. I know there are people who live for the action scenes, and then they drag at the other scenes. But I hope it shows that I enjoy the scenes where she's trying to figure things out too.
Oh, it definitely shows. I loved it and was totally into it for sure. And it's funny you say the things that were happening that kept her up and kept her moving. And I was getting tired and exhausted just reading it. It's like I could feel, I was empathizing with her in so many ways. I was like, oh, I can just feel that exhaustion from all of that. And
Yeah.
a lot of the things that I don't want to say too much. I'm trying to be spoiler free, but a lot of the things she's had to do to, I was empathizing with quite a bit.
Yeah, and I guess, I mean, I think it's not a spoiler to say that there is also actual supernatural paranormal stuff going on. I think I danced around that, but I don't think that's supposed to be a spoiler in any way. And I think there's a fun thing also where you've got a character who's just in that exhausted state, and then like weird things are happening, but how do you interpret that when you're so tired?
And there was a moment where I was like, is she hallucinating this? I mean, there was a moment where I had that. I loved how that developed. I'll leave it at that. So, speaking of which, is there a pivotal moment or a fun scene from the book that you feel like, without getting spoilers, that you feel like readers should look forward to?
Huh. Uh,
Mine is
there's
the first
one.
real scare. Like the first real supernatural event was my favorite.
Okay. I'm trying to remember what that is. That the cows, or is that?
Yes, yes, yes,
Yeah. Okay.
yes.
Yeah. I like reading that one, so that might be the answer. Yeah. There's a. Yeah, that would be what I would probably say, and you have to wait a little while for it because I want you to I kind of wanted to stretch things out to get to that point, so that when something actually happens, it you've almost given up that it's going to happen. Um, but
And I
yeah,
really want that. I wanted to experience that in real life. I was like, "What is that?" I mean,
yeah,
because
yeah. And someone wrote to me this morning and said they had just listened to the audiobook. And I've been listening to the audiobook because I love hearing what people do. Like it's like a cover version, but they did a full cast for the script sections of the book, and then there's one
I have to go
narrator for the
find
other
this.
parts. And but someone wrote to me and said I just listened to the whole thing, and I just have to ask, like what they did. They skipped the cow sound. What is the cow sound? Can you do it for like it, yeah, and I don't think I'm the person to do that, but it's kind of fun to imagine.
I have to go find this audio version because that sounds fun. So that's great. So, looking ahead, is there anything else that you're working on? Any upcoming projects and things that you can talk about? That
Usually I have a bunch of things that I can talk about immediately, and right this second, I'm in the middle of a bunch of things that I'm in the middle of something about getting lost is what I'll say that may I think ultimately turn into another novella around this length. I thought it was a short story, and usually I'm really good at telling those things, and the fact that I've gotten lost in it is a good sign for the fact that it's about getting lost. So I have to find my way out of it again, but I'm
now
looking
I'm
forward.
leaning in. I'm like, okay, what is it? I need to know.
Yeah, yeah, I
I'm
can't
going
tell
to be
you. It's
tuned
it's
in. So,
it's a creepy one, and it involves getting lost, is what I'll say. So yeah, hopefully that's kind of the next one to my mind that I'm going to get finished. And then there's a couple of short stories that are waiting patiently in line, and there's a novel that I've been working on for a while that's back in one of my other modes, not in the sort of dark fantasy mode that takes a lot of research. And because I was a history major, I geek out on the research and I forget to write the book. So at the moment I do have like 30,000 words of the book. So I'm like a third done, but I have an 80,000 word research document that I mean it's really useful for me. It's like I know that some people have like a character Bible or a universe Bible that they've created so they can go back and they know exactly, whatever the thing is they need from their world. And this is a real world thing, but it's also like super cross-referenced and keyworded up so that I can, if anyone ever needs to know, like when the chimpanzee walked into the Knickerbocker Hotel, like I can let you know. And like if they want to know when air conditioning came in, like anything like that, I'm on top of that, but at the expense of the actual words, which I will get going on. Like I know that you can't do the research forever, but I like the research.
well, I love that. Well, I'm excited, and I will definitely be tuned in and keeping an eye out. So the book is called Haunt Sweet Home. It's available everywhere on September 3rd. And as we always like to say here at Quills and Chills, please go support your local bookstores whenever possible. So, Sarah, how can our audience find you on social media?
If you can spell my name, you can find me on just about everything. I've got sarahpinsker.com, and I'm at Sarah Pinsker on Instagram and Bluesky and Facebook and the place that shall not be named. So yeah, you can usually find me if you can spell my name.
Perfect. I will make sure I put them all in the show notes and I'll put them up on the screen as well. So, Sarah, thank you so much for taking time out of your day today on this wonderful Friday. And I appreciate you being here.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
All right. And I'm going to find your music too. I'm on a mission now. So, of
Cool.
course.
Yeah, yeah. There's also one song that's specifically a creepy ballad, and you can find that if you look it up on YouTube. There's a link in the Uncanny Magazine version that links to a very rough version I did on my computer. In addition to the albums I have that are actual music. I don't know why I'm talking about this when you said you want to hear my real music. This is my fake music, but it was fake music for a story, which was a lot of fun to write. So
Well, I'll include those links as well in the show notes
okay.
because there's going to be a fun little history dive for me too to kind of dive in. I love that part of it. So,
Cheers.
all right, you guys. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time on Quills and Chills.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining me on another episode of Quills and Chills. I hope you enjoyed our deep dive into the mysterious and the haunted. If you're enjoying the show, don't forget to support us by subscribing on your preferred podcast platform and leaving us a rating or review, because your feedback helps keep those chills running down both our spines. And feel free to share the show with your favorite fellow horror enthusiasts. Also, if you guys have any spooky stories, strange encounters, or paranormal experiences of your own, I'd love to hear them. Reach out to me on social media or email me at quillsandchillspodcast@gmail.com. Who knows? Your story might end up on a very special episode. Anyway, thanks for listening, and I will see you back here next time on Quills and Chills. Bye, y'all.